Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. I appreciate you watching. Thank you for watching. So this is our first live class of the semester. I think all of you have had me for classes before, so you should all be very familiar with these protocols, the way that I kind of run things. So with that being said, I want to first of all welcome you all back, and welcome to Web 215 Advanced Markup and Scripting. Looking forward to another exciting semester. Let me first just start off by kind of reminding you all about why I handle these live classes the way that I do. So there was a survey done that basically said, approximately 80% of people, when they go to learn something new, they go to YouTube first. And I also think YouTube is a very friendly platform in terms of, what we can do with interaction. Right, so you can send messages via chat. I'm monitoring the chat if you don't want to send it in the chat. I'm also monitoring Teams and email if you want to send it that way during classes. Got those up on another window, so you're welcome to do that as well. If you watch the recording and you want to send me a question, you could send it in via email or Teams whenever you have that question, and I'll answer it as soon as possible. So, you don't have to worry about talking or having your cameras on or anything like that. It's mostly one way. It's mostly just me talking to you all, demonstrating things, and if you have questions, you can send them in. Lower stakes. Plus, it's where everybody's already at. I like to go to people where they are, so it's, it makes a lot of sense. I'm also recording a second stream. It'll be posted on Panopto as soon as possible after the live class ends today. And I'm doing these on Friday because I think this is probably one of my more challenging classes this semester that I'm running. I think it probably is the most challenging class that I'm running this semester. Just because, especially when we get to like Module 5 here, we get really intense with a lot of JavaScript code. So I think having the live class as early as possible in the week, which my class weeks run Friday to Thursday, assignments are due on Thursdays, so new modules are starting on Fridays, so it would be on a module start day that we would be having a live class. And I'll have them every Friday I can. Right, in my new role, sometimes that's not possible. In those cases, I will typically have something that's either pre-recorded or something that I can, maybe rearrange and do some other time. But 1 o'clock on Fridays is going to be our time for the foreseeable future, as long as I can make it. So that's going to be our goal. But I said today that what I would do is I would just kind of go into a little bit of a deeper dive into our Begin Here module, just talk about the course a little bit more, make sure we're all clear on everything there. So the orientation video in the Begin Here module hits a lot of the high points, hits a lot of the big things there. So if you watch that orientation video, you're probably up to speed fairly well already. Right, there are a couple things that I'm going to go into a little more depth over as we're kind of going through here, but today's live class will be relatively short. Usually I like to have these go around an hour between discussion and demonstration and all that kind of stuff. One of my goals is to do more demonstration as a part of these live classes as we're kind of going forward. So we're going to try to do more demonstration and do more hands-on stuff in these as we're kind of working with things. So that will be something to kind of keep in mind. But this is Web 215 Advanced Markup and Scripting. Got your orientation video there that you can watch. That has a lot of this information in it. EVA, going to send you that reminder again. Want to make sure that you do that before August the 25th. August the 25th is the census deadline for this course, which means on the morning of August the 26th, I will have to validate my attendance rosters, which means that if you don't have a graded assignment on record by EOD August 25th, I have to drop you from the class for never attending. Now, I will try to reach out to you unless you send me some kind of message saying, you know what, I don't really want to do the course, signed up for it, thought it might be different, or whatever. Unless you send me some kind of message to that regard, I will, try to find you and remind you. But as it stands, you want to make sure you get this completed by the 25th so you can stay in the course. Getting started here. This is just some stuff about Blackboard and different things. Most of you probably already know this stuff already, so I'm not going to spend any time here. Just remember that this stuff is here if you need it. If you forget, it's right here. And the syllabus. So again, since all of you are second year or third year or however, you've taken classes before, you know what a syllabus is. Syllabus is the contract between me and you. It establishes expectations for you, and it establishes expectations for me. And so the big thing here is the course description, right? And so the course description for this course is that this course covers the advanced programming skills required to design internet applications and interactive web content. Emphasis is placed on the programming techniques required to develop internet applications, interactive web content, frameworks, and using libraries. Upon completion, students should be able to design, code, debug, and document internet-based programming solutions to various real-world problems. And so let's talk about what that means, kind of piggybacking it off of Web 115, which this is the second level course to Web 115. So when we're talking about markup and scripting, like there are kind of a couple terms here that are kind of incongruous with one another. They're kind of at odds with one another because we're talking about markup and scripting here, but the course description talks about programming. Right? And so when we're talking about markup, in particular, as we sort of discussed in Web 115, programming and markup are kind of two different things, right? So markup is primarily HTML. We also consider CSS to some degree to be markup. But it's the language that, establishes the sort of the framework of our page, right? And then scripting is programming, but it's going to be more front end, right? When we think about scripting as far as all that goes, we think about less intense programming than we would see on back-end programming. So this is still all front-end web development that we're talking about in this course, just like we did in Web 115, right? This is an extension of Web 115, which means we're going to do some more advanced CSS stuff, some more advanced HTML stuff. As we're kind of getting started here, that's the first couple of modules, right? Module 1 is actually a HTML and CSS refresher boot camp, just to make sure that we remember everything that we learned last year, right? Because there's been a whole summer between last year and this year, so we want to make sure that we remember everything that we did last year. Then Module 2 talks about responsive web design, so we talk about how to take regular websites that we were doing back last year and make them responsive and make them kind of flow. So we talk about some advanced topics with things like dynamic units and media queries and various things like that. And then complex selectors and pseudo classes is some more advanced CSS that works in the DOM, so it works with the HTML. And, back last year, we were doing very simple selections. We were using, basically just our ID, our class, and our element selectors in CSS to do very, very simple selections. And now we're going to be looking at complex selections. So we can say things like, oh, well, what if we have a link that is inside a paragraph. How do we specifically want to target links that are inside of paragraphs as opposed to links that are inside of, say, list items, right? So we can do that with complex selectors. Then CSS transitions and animations. That's kind of fun. You know, people like doing that a little bit. We talk about animating things with CSS, making things move with CSS. Various things of that nature. And then we get into the big meat of the course, which is JavaScript. And JavaScript, as we know it, runs from Module 5 to Module 9. And so this is basically, you know, we have basically 5 modules here that deep dive us through vanilla JavaScript, right? Just plain JavaScript. And we cover some frameworks throughout these different modules, right? You'll remember frameworks and libraries, those two terms from the course description. We cover some different frameworks throughout throughout these different modules, things like the object framework, various things with arrays. We do events, different frameworks that are built into JavaScript. So we cover those sorts of things alongside of these topics in JavaScript. And then in Module 10, we talked about libraries. Module 10 is a library here. So it's P5.js, which is a library that's built on top of JavaScript. So it's pretty fun. We actually do some rudimentary sort of game design, interactive design here. So by the end of the course, we're making some pretty cool stuff, actually. I can kind of show you. Let me see here. Let me just do this and kind of drag it off screen. So I can kind of show you an example of some of the stuff that was done, you know, as the final project to last year's class. Right, so I can show you how far we kind of go in this course. I think it's kind of cool. So if we look here, this semester is also where we start actually doing files on servers instead of, you know, doing things through Replit and things of that nature. And so this is a Pong application that a student created last fall. You can see relatively simple application, but we can see that it's working. Right, I'm able to use my mouse and move the paddle at the bottom there. You can see that it's keeping my score. We can also go up here and see instructions for the game. And the home page is where the game is at. So we get pretty far in this course, and we end up making some pretty cool stuff. Which is pretty cool. And so we basically cover everything along the way that's in the course description there, as we always try to do. You know, we want to make sure that you know the things that are sort of based on the things that the state says you need to know. Right, so there's no textbook. It's all in the module, or it's all in the modules. You do need, you know, a good computer that can work on things. One of the things that I recommend is to use GitHub for your project submissions. I think pretty much everybody is also in Web 140, where we talk about Git and GitHub. So, you know, once you learn about that stuff in that course, I recommend taking the material from this course and also putting it on your Git and GitHub. It's not a requirement, but it is a good idea. So keep that in mind. You can see here that, this is basically lab and project class, right? Your labs count as 65% of your grade. The project counts for 30% of your grade. So, like the project example that I just showed you all there, something like that is going to count for 30% of your grade. We'll have a look at that final project in just a moment so you can see how involved it is. Got our schedule here. Due dates are on Thursdays. We can see we have it planned out for the entire semester here, so we know what we're doing. Right, as I sort of mentioned in the orientation video, this is the first time we're starting online and seated classes at the same time. So we're used to having to take these courses and kind of compress them into 14 weeks for online, but this semester we get a little more luxury, we get a little more breathing room with our modules. So I'm taking this opportunity to try to give you all some more time off. Like, I don't have weeks off scheduled here, but you can see that around fall break time, you have a little extra time in your module to work, right? So there's a little extra time to where if you want to take some days off, it's fine. Same thing for around the end of November where Thanksgiving would be. There's some extra days built into those modules at that point to where if you want to take some time off, it's fine. Right, easy peasy. Course norms. One of the big things here is that assignments will be completed before or on the due date. I don't like late work. That's something you all probably know about me anyway, right? I don't like late work. I always say, we're going to treat this professionally like we would in the workplace. If you get an assignment for your boss, like if my boss gave me a task and they said, I want this completed by this day, and then that day comes and goes and they never hear anything from me, I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble. Right, but if I start to work on it and I see that it's going to take more than maybe I have the capacity for at the moment, and I go to my boss and I say, hey, listen, I know you said this day we're running into this issue and this issue. I think it would be better if we could maybe bump that out a little bit. If I could get a little bit of an extension, that's ideal, right? So if you know you're going to miss a deadline ahead of time, right, let me know. Get in touch with me as soon as possible, and we can work something out. Otherwise, it just kind of is what it is, right? So we want to, this is one of those things where we're also encouraging good professional skills as well, right? Don't email anything unless I give you expressed permission that you can email it. Ideally, we want everything submitted in Blackboard. That way everything's contained in one place. Those are the big things there. I'll let you read all the other stuff there on your time. Email is the primary form of communication. I always like email because, it's on me at all times. I have my Outlook on my phone as well as on my desk, on my computers. Right? So even if I don't have my phone, I'm usually close to my email. If I'm not at my computer, I have my phone, I have my email. Teams is also a good method, right? So even though email is technically my primary method, Teams is kind of like 1A and 1B, right? So if you want to send me a Teams message, that's great. Right? I got information in this Begin Here module about how to use Teams. I think all of you know how to use it by now. And that's the big stuff here. So my instructor information's here. As I mentioned in the orientation video, since I've changed roles here at the college, I don't have set student hours anymore. But you can make an appointment with me. Email me, send me a Teams message, call me if if you have to. We can talk. And we can set up an appointment for you to come by if you need to. I talk about where my office is in the orientation video, so you can watch that. For that information, it's on the top floor of the Jack Hunt Campus Center. Right around the corner from where the IT help desk is now. So, if you need me, I am findable. I'm just not in the same place I was this time last year. weekend policy here. I do check email over the weekend, but I'm trying to keep better boundaries and not check it quite as often. Right. So for the best response times, for quickest response times, you want to try to get into me as early as possible. And this is that information I was talking about how to use Teams if you need some instruction on Teams. Frequently asked questions. I think I've answered most of this, or you all know kind of a lot of this. Due dates are in the pacing guide. I also have them for this course. I have them on the nav bar just to make things a little bit easier for you all. I try to grade everything within 7 days of the due date. So if you submit something early, I'm going to wait until the due date to start grading it because, then it's a level playing field. Then, because, I'm not saying anybody here would do it, but, you could say oh, I got this grade before the due date. And so now I can share with all my friends, oh, this is what you need to do to get this grade. Or here's what I did, and so you can copy it and make changes and get an A also, So we say here, even if you turn it in after the deadline, if I don't, if you haven't communicated with me where I've granted you an extension, it's a 0. It just sort of is what it is. I'm sorry. So stay aware of the due dates and communicate with me. The big thing is communication, right? Reach out, talk to me. Submit assignments through Blackboard. All that kind of fun stuff. Here's your pacing guide again. So it's right here when modules are assigned and due. It's also on the nav menu over here. The due dates are on the nav menu. So I think everything should be clear to everybody about when everything's due in this class. Live class here. Some good material here for you to look at. Some material about submitting assignments if you forgot how to use Blackboard over the summer. A little bit about how to succeed in online courses. If you haven't watched this before, I put this information into all my online courses. It's just some tips and tricks about succeeding in online courses and things that you can do. I've got this online readiness quiz here, and this is something that I would more do with people in my earlier online classes, like my CTI 110s and things like that. But, this is kind of pretty cool. This is also something else that's if you wanted to see where you could go with things. I made this online readiness assessment myself. And so it's all that sort of stuff, right? If I put it wants to know your first name, so we can put that in there. Then it wants to know your last name, so we can put that in there. And then ask for a student ID. Has a bit of questions here that you can do. Then I use an algorithm to calculate a score for you. So I'm just going to randomly just select some answers here. So this is another example of some things that you can do with the skills that you could learn in this class, because this is all JavaScript based here. I'm just going through randomly selecting some answers. And when I submit, it gives me an assessment score based on the answers I gave. And it gives me some information here. So it gives me a score. This is customized based on the score. Then I have all this information here that is based on the answers of the questions. And you can print the result. Like so. So it's one of those things where this isn't being sent to anyone. It's all JavaScript. It's all front end. It's all for you to kind of understand where you're at. It also links out to this online readiness course here, which is kind of cool. I also built this. But it just kind of goes through some stuff here. It's a bit outdated at this point, but it's pretty good. So the big thing here is the assessment. If you want to do that, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. Again, this is all just things for you all to look at, just for your benefit. Discussion board here. This is your, this is one of your assignments for the Begin Here module. I'm sorry, right? Like, it's just the way that things are. That, if you go to a class, when you start a class for the first time, you always have to introduce yourself. There's always going to be one of these introductions. I know we probably get tired of typing the same introductory discussion board over and over and over again, but we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again and again and again, and it's going to be okay. And then we have your orientation quiz for the Begin Here module. And that's everything for the Begin Here module. I do want to look briefly at the final project just so you can kind of see what's involved in that. You can see that it's basically everything that we learned throughout the semester. You're asked to make a game. You're asked to make a page for instructions on how to play, right? Like we saw that in the example site we saw earlier. And it should contain, in some fashion, everything that we discuss throughout the semester, right? So you get to determine how you implement that into your site and what kind of game you want to try to make and all that kind of fun stuff. You just have to include everything to some degree, right? So we'll talk more about that when we get closer to it. Right, and so that's really all that I have for you for today. We've got about 30 minutes, which is really longer than I wanted to go for this. So I think we're good to go ahead and stop here. We'll kind of hold for questions just in case anybody has them. But I think we're going to be all right. If you're watching the recording of this, feel free to send me any questions via email or Teams, as I mentioned previously. Next Friday, we will have a look at our bootcamp module, which is module 1. In all of my upper level web development courses, they all start with this bootcamp module. It helps to give you reminders about the things that we've learned previously, and it helps to get you some practice in creating websites, right? Because we need that, right? So with that being said, and since I'm not seeing any questions coming in, that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.